What's up, Hammer supporters? Before diving into today's news, smash the like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments what you think about West Ham's situation. You won't want to miss anything. If there is one thing West Ham fans took from that frustrating afternoon against Bournemouth, it is the glaring truth that the squad's depth is simply not good enough. The team can put together a solid starting 11 when everyone is fit and available, but the moment injuries, suspensions, or basic fatigue come into play, everything collapses with alarming speed. And with the January window just a few weeks away, the pressure to reinforce has never felt heavier. The essential needs are crystal clear: a striker who can actually influence matches, and a center-back capable of stabilizing the back line. These are not luxury additions. They are survival necessities for a squad that has been stretched to its limits. The Bournemouth match exposed just how wide the gap is between the regular starters and those who are tasked with stepping in. Players like Nicholas Füllkrug, who needed to show urgency and hunger, delivered exactly the opposite. He looked off the pace, lacking sharpness, and at times almost uninterested in doing the gritty work required of a Premier League striker. Max Kilman, who should be providing leadership in defense, instead contributed to both goals conceded, leaving supporters gasping at the sheer fragility of the unit. And when a fan base that spent last year booing Dinos Mavropanos suddenly counts the days to his return, you know the situation has hit an uncomfortable low. With Liverpool coming up next, the expected returns of Lucas Paquetá, Dinos, and possibly Crescencio Somerville offer some hope, at least for the immediate future. Their presence alone lifts the starting 11 to a completely different level. But the problem goes far beyond whether the first team looks good on paper. Once you scratch beneath the surface, past the main group and maybe 2 or 3 reliable backups, the squad thins out dramatically. That lack of competitive depth is exactly what holds the team back whenever injuries strike. It is the reason West Ham cannot rotate effectively, and why performances dip the moment 1 or 2 key players are missing. Even the few dependable squad players like Kyle Walker-Peters and Fabian Sornosa are not enough to fill all the gaps. The drop-off from them to the likes of Kilman, Igor, and Füllkrug is simply too sharp to sustain the demands of a full Premier League season. And that is why the January window becomes not just important, but absolutely pivotal. If West Ham want to remain competitive, if they want to play Nuno Espirito Santo's football with consistency and authority, reinforcements have to arrive. Not fringe projects, not speculative options. Proper upgrades who immediately raise the level of the team and ensure Nuno is not left improvising lineups every time 2 players are unavailable. Supporters can feel the urgency in the air. They know this window has to be different. They know the club cannot talk about ambition while putting out makeshift 11s that crumble against mid-table sides. And above all, they know that continuing with this thin, unreliable bench is a gamble the team cannot afford, not with the Premier League table tightening, not with tougher fixtures looming, and not with the expectation that West Ham should be evolving, not regressing. That is why the next few weeks matter so much. They carry the weight of the season, perhaps even the weight of the project under Nuno. Before we carry on, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. This is really important because it strengthens the Claret and Blue family, making our West Ham bigger and stronger every day. As the conversation shifts toward who West Ham might realistically target in January, the striker debate takes center stage. The frustration with Nicholas Füllkrug has grown to the point where many supporters would not be surprised if he returns to Germany mid-window. He may have recently come back from injury, but it is not just about fitness. It is about desire, body language, and the willingness to impose himself when the team needs it most. Against Bournemouth, he never once looked like a player fighting for his place. And while a goal against Liverpool could change the narrative instantly, few fans are holding their breath. The sense that his time is already ticking down feels stronger by the week. Max Kilman does not escape criticism either. His performance against Bournemouth only deepened the doubts around him, and the idea that Crystal Palace could be eyeing him as Mark Guehi's replacement next summer has left many baffled. Last season, Dinos Mavropanos could barely walk onto the pitch without being booed off it, and now his return is awaited like a rescue mission. That contrast alone shows how fragile the defensive situation has become. The truth is that West Ham need a defender who can provide authority, calmness, and consistency, 3 qualities the current alternatives simply are not offering often enough. But the search for a striker attracts even more attention, and plenty of names have been thrown into the rumor mill. Joshua Zirkzee from Manchester United continues to be mentioned, though his midweek performance against Everton hardly generated confidence among West Ham supporters. Santiago Jimenez has also resurfaced as a possible option, though Milan appear far more interested in selling than in entertaining a loan deal. And then there is Troy Parrott, currently at AZ Alkmaar, whose sudden link to West Ham has an all-too-familiar signature. He is represented by Will Salthouse, an agent whose involvement has historically produced extremely underwhelming signings for the club. To be fair, Callum Wilson has forced many to rethink that argument. He arrived with the same Salthouse connection and has proven to be one of the few recent striker signings who genuinely contributes. His sharpness, experience, and hunger have made him unexpectedly important, and supporters are simply hoping he stays fit long enough for the club to reach the January window intact. Parrott, meanwhile, does not fit the stereotype of a fading striker looking for one last contract. At 23, with a respectable scoring record in the Netherlands and significant experience at international level with Ireland, he represents a different profile entirely. Whether he fits Nuno's tactical demands is another question. He is a poacher, not a creator. He thrives on crosses and quick breaks rather than dropping deep or linking play. And that is where the conversation becomes more nuanced. Under Nuno, West Ham operate best when the team is compact and explosive in transition. The wide players, Somerville, Paquetá, and Bowen, carry the creative burden, while the striker's job is to finish the moves with precision. In that system, a penalty box predator can thrive, provided he is mobile, aggressive, and instinctive. Parrott might fit that mold in some ways, but he lacks that deeper playmaking quality that Nuno sometimes demands when the team faces opponents who sit deeper. It makes him an interesting option, but perhaps not the ideal one if West Ham intend to reshape their attacking unit decisively this winter. And that brings us to a far more intriguing name. Promise David. This is a striker identified by Max Hahn, West Ham's head of technical recruitment and analysis. Hahn was expected by many to fade into the background after Tim Steighton's departure and Graham Potter's brief arrival with Carl McCauley. Yet under Nuno, Hahn has not just remained, his influence has grown. Promise David, a tall, powerful Canadian forward currently starring in the Belgian Pro League, fits the profile of a player who could transform the way West Ham attack. Strong in the air, dominant in duels, a focal point for direct play, and still young enough to develop significantly, he is the kind of striker who could become a long-term leader of the line. His scoring numbers in Belgium are impressive, his physical presence stands out, and his combination of link-up potential and penalty box instinct is exactly what Nuno looks for. The fact that Union SG paid barely €600,000 for him and may now demand around $13 million makes the deal both expensive in percentage terms and yet reasonable in Premier League terms. He is raw, yes, and he still needs to refine several aspects of his game, but the basic qualities, power, aerial dominance, finishing instinct, are already there. If West Ham want a striker who can grow within the system rather than be a short-term patch, Promise David checks almost every box. The potential arrival of a forward like David would not only address an immediate need, but also shift the long-term outlook of the club's attacking structure. Instead of relying on short-term fixes, West Ham could finally commit to a player capable of leading the line for years rather than months. It fits the idea that Nuno wants to build something more stable, more predictable, and more resilient than what we have seen in recent seasons. But identifying the right striker is only part of the story. A proper center-back remains just as essential, especially given the continued uncertainty around the defensive group. Before we carry on, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. This is really important because it strengthens the Claret and Blue family, making our West Ham bigger and stronger every day. The need for defensive reinforcements runs just as deep as the urgency for a new striker. West Ham have been linked for weeks with Charlie Cresswell and, more recently, Lecce's 20-year-old Portuguese defender, Tiago Gabriel. Reports suggest that West Ham have already submitted a £16 million bid for him, despite the transfer window still being weeks away from opening. Lecce appear to value him much higher, closer to the £22 million mark. which would represent a remarkable profit for a player they signed for roughly €1 million less than a year ago. Yet the fascination around Gabriel is understandable. He fits the tactical and physical template that Nuno Espirito Santo expects from his defenders. Gabriel's profile is built around athleticism, ball progression, and aerial presence. He is tall, quick across short distances, and unusually composed for a center-back of his age. His scouting data points to a defender who can step into midfield, break lines with his passing, and still deliver the more traditional defensive work, winning duels, intercepting danger, and commanding the air. But with all that promise comes an important caveat. He is not an instant fix. Throwing him straight into the starting lineup would be unfair and potentially damaging. Instead, he is better viewed as a medium-term project, someone who could be eased into minutes while learning the system from experienced partners. If West Ham do pursue Gabriel seriously, pairing him with a Premier League-proven defender would be the ideal outcome. Someone who can stabilize the line immediately, allowing the young Portuguese talent to be developed sensibly rather than rushed in out of desperation. The reality is that the club's current central defensive group needs far more than one promising youngster. Dinos Mavropanos provides aerial authority, but beyond him, the drop-off in reliability is steep. A balanced approach, one experienced signing and one developmental signing, would finally give Nuno the kind of defensive structure he has been craving. Beyond centre-backs, the rumour mill continues to churn out links to midfielders and forwards who do not necessarily represent an upgrade. Josh Sargent from Norwich City is one such example. His goal drought this season has made some fans skeptical, but his overall record, 54 goals and 14 assists in 150 games, shows he is not as barren as some would claim. Still, the question remains, is he truly better than what West Ham already have? And if the January window is supposed to address immediate needs rather than future gambles, signing a striker whose form has cooled significantly would be a major risk. Another name generating attention is Bochum's 19-year-old defensive midfielder Kajetan Lenz. He has been excellent individually despite his club struggling in the Bundesliga 2 table, and his agent claims that clubs from across Germany and Europe have already made inquiries. But even with his impressive rise, the same concern lingers. How much does he improve West Ham in the short term? And is he truly ahead of the club's own prospects such as Mohamed Diakite or Preston Fear? Long-term planning is important, of course, but the January window is not the place for speculative development projects. It is meant to plug urgent gaps. Fullbacks have also entered the conversation, particularly with Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Malik Diouf expected to miss time due to AFCON commitments. But replacing them in January only makes sense if the incoming player is versatile enough to play in multiple positions, especially center-back. Sacha Boey of Bayern Munich has been mentioned, but his profile raises doubts. He is primarily a right-back, and while he is occasionally featured at left-back and even midfield, he does not appear to be the kind of defender who can transition into central areas. West Ham need flexibility, not another specialist who simply adds to the numbers without solving the core issue. That is why Arnau Martinez is a far more compelling link. The Girona defender has been on West Ham's radar before, and his mixture of athleticism, intelligence, and, crucially, versatility makes him a much more logical target. He can play at right-back and centre-back with equal comfort, fitting perfectly into Nuno's counter-attacking philosophy. Girona managed to lock him down to a contract through 2027, which cooled earlier interest, but the rumors have resurfaced, likely because Max Hahn has identified him once again as a priority option. At 22, Martinez is young enough to grow, but experienced enough to contribute immediately. He may well be one of the smartest defensive investments West Ham could make. As always, the closer we get to the opening of the window, the more rumors will flood in. Some will be exciting, many will be nonsense, and a few will be genuine targets the club is seriously considering. But among all the speculation, two names stand out above the rest: Promise David and Arnau Martinez. They are young, affordable relative to Premier League standards, and well-suited to Nuno's system. They represent the kind of signings that could shape not just the remainder of the season, but the direction of the club over the coming years. And in a period when West Ham desperately need clarity, structure, and ambition, That kind of forward-thinking recruitment could be exactly what stabilizes the project. For the fans, the hope is simple, that the club act decisively, intelligently, and with clear intention. The squad cannot continue scraping by on thin margins and patched-together lineups. If West Ham truly want to build something lasting under Nuno, these next weeks will define whether that vision takes shape or fades into another cycle of unfulfilled potential. And with that, the spotlight is firmly on the recruitment team, the board, and the manager to seize the opportunity. The window is approaching fast, and the decisions made now will echo far beyond the winter months. So that's all for today, folks. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, share, and of course subscribe to the channel for more. Take care, and I'll see you next time.